here with me. These are actually youth who are participating in confirmation. That's Bradley Weaver, Henry Waite, and Isabella Wallenpass. So they're helping me, well, kind of leading the service today, and come up with some of the ideas for it. So, but one of the things we've been talking about as we start confirmation, because we're only 3 lessons in, is that it's about sort of finding your own truth in your own way and understanding how you see the world and coming up with how you see it for yourself, not just conforming to what's been taught along the way. So one of the first things we did was talk about the different way the characters in the Bartimaeus story saw what was going on, or what belief system they were operating out of, and how that affected their actions. So I'm trying to remember your Bartimaeus. So we'll start with Bartimaeus, Isabella. So how did Bartimaeus?
They were telling him that Jesus was too important, he shouldn't be bothering him, but he thought Jesus would help him because he believed in Jesus. He really thought he could help.
So he had heard about Jesus, and even though he was blind and a beggar, he thought Jesus would take the time, right? How did he get Jesus' attention?
He was persistent and kept asking, like, can you help me see? Can you help me see Jesus?
Okay, so, and he also asked him something very specific, right? He knew what he really needed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and there were some disciples in the crowd.
So the disciples, they thought Jesus was too important to be talking to people like Bartimaeus, who were just beggars. So the disciples were kind of blind to Jesus' teachings, where he could help everyone.
Okay, and Jesus himself, right? Oh, what? Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah. So Jesus didn't thought that just because, like, he was willing to help anybody that wanted his help, and he, even though the disciples told him not to help Bartimaeus, he still wanted to help. And Jesus, like,
Well, so Jesus is helping him. Why do you, if the disciples thought this guy was not important, what does that tell you that Jesus thought?
Jesus didn't care how important he was. He still thought he deserved to, like, see.
Okay, so from Jesus' perspective, it didn't matter whether you were the king or a pauper, he was still going to help, right? All right, so one of the other things we talked about this past week is about heretics, right? So a heretic is someone who sees the world in a different light, so, or sees the world in a way that most people don't, right? So, and the belief doesn't even have to be religious. There can be beliefs that go against the status quo or go against the people in power. And so one of the things I ask the youth to do is ask you a few questions. So if you agree with any of these statements, just raise your hand.
Okay. Do you think that the earth goes around the sun?
Okay?
Do you think democracy is a good thing?
Do you think white supremacy is a good thing?
Say that again, Bradley. I don't think they heard.
Oh. Do you think white supremacy is a good thing?
Okay.
Do you think gay and trans kids deserve as many rights as straight kids?
Do you think women should be paid as much as men for the same job?
All right, if you raised your hand in answer to any of these questions, congratulations. At one point in time, you would have been a
Heretic.
Right. So heresy undermines the established authority and the things that the authority don't like, right? Heresy can change the way things are, change the ways people see the world. For example, Galileo was a scientist who put forth the idea that the earth revolved around the sun. The religious belief at the time was that everything revolved around the earth. The sun and all the other planets revolved around the earth. So his notion was declared a heresy, and even though he renounced it, he was arrested and on house arrest for really pretty much the rest of his life. So, but yet we see that the earth revolves around the sun, right? It's pretty common, a pretty understandable thing. So keep in mind that heresies do not have to be religious. For example, when the idea was first brought up, we talked about how people thought human-caused climate change was sort of a heresy, right? Now we think that the people who don't think human-caused climate change is an issue are a little on the heretical side. So heresies are not in and of themselves good or bad, but they're seeing the world a different way. So one of the things I asked the youth to think about is who their favorite heretic is. So Bradley, why don't you start us?
My favorite heretic is Jackie Robinson
And why is Jackie Robinson your favorite heretic?
because he was the first African American baseball player in the major leagues, and he paved the way for other African American baseball players.
Okay,
as
so
of
he
today.
believed himself
Yeah.
good enough to play on a professional baseball team, right? Even though, did he get to stay in the same hotels and get the same benefits other baseball players? But he stuck with it, right? Because he believed the world could be a different place. Okay, how about you, Henry?
I chose Socrates. He was a heretic because he got people to question themselves and their rulers, and so he fundamentally got people to undermine authority, not undermine, but just question them and see what they were really doing.
So Socrates said the unexamined life isn't important, right? You told me he went around and what did he do?
He just asked, like, why people were doing what they were doing. So if you have a job, why do you do that? Or if you're, I don't know, supporting a cause, why do you support that cause? And it just got people to realize, like, maybe we aren't thinking about this right.
Right. So by causing people to think, it may have changed where they were coming from, right? So how about you?
My favorite heretic was Rosa Parks, and she believed that she shouldn't have to stand up for a white person to be able to sit. She was tired from work that day, and she shouldn't have to move just because of her skin color.
Right. So again, she believed the world should be a different place, right? That she was as important as any other person on that bus and worth as much. So, and she really helped kick off the civil rights movement, right? And so all these heretics sort of change. I mean, Socrates, if you ever go to law school, you get to hear a lot about the Socratic method. And so all these heretics, eventually, the world is a little closer to what they thought it would be, right? Well, maybe not Socrates, but I'm not sure we're all into the unexamined life. So the word heresy literally means choice. And so it's about how we are in the world and what we're choosing and how we're choosing to encounter the world. Are we going to choose for ourselves, or are we going to just follow the status quo, be a conformer because that's the easier path, even when we know maybe it's not quite right, correct? So one thing I found in the kids thought we should share is this last little bit. You want to help me read it? Sure. You do this, it's okay. So, and these are sort of statements held against each other, maybe different ways of seeing and both from a biblical standpoint. Genocide is biblical. Loving your enemy is biblical.
Only one is Christ-like.
Slavery is biblical. Chain breaking is biblical.
But only one is Christ-like.
Patriarchy is biblical. Countercultural elevation of women is biblical.
But only one is Christ-like.
Retributive violence is biblical. Grace-filled restoration is biblical.
But only one is Christ-like.
Segregation is biblical. Unity is biblical.
But only one is Christ-like.
Christ transforms, not the Bible. Be wary of those who know. Christ transforms, not the Bible. Be wary of those who know one, but not the other.